Hey Versus community, this is the People's Champ, Robby Stewart here, taking over C-Stack's channel for a video. As you know, he's been had a lot of life going on right now, so it's been tough for him to put out content. So we're going to go over my winning deck from Oklahoma. If you've lived under a rock or just joined the Versus community, there was an in-person tournament about 3 weeks ago where I won with my photographic Captain Marvel deck. So today we're going to kind of go over my pre-testing for Oklahoma, break down the deck list that you should see on screen, as well as go over my round-by-round breakdown and some of the post-tournament analysis, as well as my thoughts on good versus evil as a format as a whole. So as soon as Oklahoma was announced that it was going to happen, I knew it was going to go. We were coming right off the heels of the Quarantine Cup, and suffice to say, I was sick of playing Captain Marvel. I had grinded a lot of games for the Quarantine Cup with her. I wasn't all that in love with the deck, so I just was like, I'm good. I want to play something different. So I put together about 7 different decks, and I even fine-tuned about 2 of them to where I was like, hey, I might take these decks. But there was one just matchup during all my testing I just couldn't win anywhere near consistent, and that was Outriders. Outriders were just a problem. They were just, I was playing with these decks and I was winning maybe 1 out of 2 out of 10. They were just dominating me that bad. So it was kind of, stuck. I was like, man, I have no idea what I want to play. So my playtesting partner, Bobby Break, had suggested, well, why don't you bust out your Captain Marvel deck from the Quarantine Cup, see how it fares against Outriders. So I took it out, and we grinded a couple games, and I got a lot further with her against Outriders than any other deck. I think I even won one, and we played like 4 games. So I was like, okay, well, you know what? Let me make some changes. I didn't like how it was performing fully. I didn't think it was optimal, so I made the changes to what you're pretty much seeing before you. At that time, I had 4 Anya and 2 Odin instead of the 3 Bruce Banner. So we started testing with this new version, and then it started winning, and it was winning relatively comfortably, as comfortable as you can against Outriders. So we sat on it for a week, and I was like, okay, let's see if next week we come back to it. It does better. So I made the few changes with getting rid of the Odins, putting in the Bruce Banners, came to testing, and I was winning still. So I was pretty comfortable. As an MC, I was aware of photos, something I'm very intimate with all the cards. So we just started jamming other matchups. And she was doing okay. The changes I made really allowed for a more streamlined game, one way or the other. I was scared of any kind of weird Maximus deck. The OTK decks, something I was missing, like Mimic. Primarily just because there was not enough time to test everything, but I knew that if I faced those were probably going to be a struggle. I had no interaction as far as any kind of supporting character that would stop a superpower. No Killmongers, no Mordos, no Nullifier, to be able to try and combat those things. So I just kind of said, you know what? I took a gamble and said I don't think they're going to show up as much in large numbers. I think it'd be much more aggressive meta, especially with Outriders, and that I needed to be prepared for those more than I was for the one-turn to kill decks. So we'll go over the deck list, break it down card by card, talk about some of my card choices. So you'll see 4 Ant-Man, 4 Yondu, 4 Maria Hill, 4 Tony Stark, 4 Dana Scully, 4 Iron Man, 3 Anya, 3 Groot, 3 Bruce Banner, 3 Fox Mulder, 4 He's a Friend from Work, 4 You're the Last One, 4 Avengers Tower, 4 X-Files, 4 Academy, and 4 Magic Box or Blues. So the deck is very, very streamlined. I think one of the biggest things you're going to notice is the lack of lone gunmen. Honestly, they're a very, very strong package. So I looked at the overall deck as a whole. I already played with the gunman package in Captain Marvel, and I just felt the synergy wasn't strong enough. It's a little bit more high rolly than I wanted, and I felt like Captain Marvel was not designed to take advantage of the lone gunman's effects one way or the other. You know, the game went long enough to where they could draw out of it, or the game just didn't matter because they're playing Outriders, and I couldn't exactly take advantage of the advantage it gave me and grind out the game that way. Because there's a lot of cards. It was a lot of cards. I mean, so I was like, you know what, this X-Files package is better. I think the Tony Stark package will give me more team attack, more ranged, and still gave me some aggressive plays with the Ant-Mans and, you know, an early Tony Stark Iron Man combo to fight some of their slower MCs. I gotta give way credit to the Dana Scully, Fox Mulder, X-Files package. Super strong package. Really, really good. It felt like a very natural fit into this deck. The last card I think I'll speak on are Anya and Bruce Banner. Anya, you can always say there's some merit to Sokovia Accords. I felt like you couldn't get enough value out against Outriders with it. I think against the normal deck, Sokovia is probably better. It's a little bit more flexible, opens up your 4-drop slot, whereas Anya was a direct answer to those big game states, those big board swings where you're coming back. You know, they've invested a lot into a character, you know, pump-wise, but it also allows for those safe, guaranteed attacks, minus like shock to the system. So they'll, you know, they want to do anything to pump up their defense, or you know, it just doesn't matter. It's not going to work, or their attack's not going to go through. So Bruce Banner was actually a legitimate choice over Odin to just be played alongside Fox Mulder. It was really strong to be able to do that big turn swing, Fox Mulder plus Bruce Banner. I don't think any of y'all got to see it on stream, but it did happen, especially during testing. So deck as a whole, I was really satisfied with it. You might say there's room for a goose or two, and I'd say that too. You could play with some numbers and try to find a way to fit that in, but honestly the deck was really solid, really tight, played good. I was very happy with how it performed over the weekend, very consistent. It's just a deck that wants to rumble, play a fair game, and just, you know, get in there and get in with each other. Very mid-rangey, grinding out the games. So with that, we'll get in my round-by-round breakdown here. Round 1, I played against Rogue. I am so sorry I don't have everyone's names, but I did remember the decks. So played against Rogue, and I started off relatively strong. So did he. He was leveling pretty quickly. I was leveling pretty quickly. We got to the point where I just kind of ran out of steam. He had pulled off 2 Gargoyle Might Right combo. I had played an Anya, and I let him use a Fine Cover, forgetting about my Anya's effect. He made a couple errors too. It was just overall, it was a sloppy game, first game of the day. I know that's one of the ones I'm always the most nervous about, because you don't know how the day's going to go. You don't know if your pick was the right pick, or, you know, the meta call. But essentially, I ran out of steam in the late game. I whiffed a couple Molders, hit a couple one-ofs that he saw, that I was like, okay, maybe he's playing another copy, and hit it, and I just whiffed. And I should have checked his deck after the first mold, but I just took his word for it, so I didn't check. I was being dumb. Like I said, first round, being real just nerves and just sloppy play. So round 2, played against Warrant Officer Ripley. Not a match I wanted to see. I was like, oh, here we go. But it's nothing that I wasn't prepared to play against. I knew Tony Stark was going to be important to draw into my molders, get rid of his threats, Ant-Man, stuff to get early wounds on. It didn't happen because he drew, I couldn't tell you how many Earths. I honestly lost count. He was down for most of the game. And I just kind of sat there on Tony Stark's, drew cards, till eventually I plopped down a molder. And one molder got big value because I hit 2 cards with the same molder. He couldn't clear it. So I got rid of his Power Man and his Silver Surfers. And that was a huge boon for me. I had to work through a Fing Fang Foom, Gilgamesh once or twice that I eventually got rid of with Molder, Hyperion. I just worked through the rest of his big game drops, and Bruce Banner just eventually wound up getting out of control to where even with a pumped up Thing, he couldn't get over it. It was well into the 20s and 30s, eventually into the 40s. He blew up the world at one point, put a wound on my Bruce Banner, cleared the rest of the board. However, I just healed the wound off Bruce Banner, got him big again, and he just ran out of steam and ran out of threats to be able to just prolong the game and maybe get to time. So I took the game round 2. Round 3, I played against the Thor deck. There wasn't a lot to it here. He didn't draw bad. However, Captain Marvel's just really good against aggressive decks. He ran out of steam. I still had plenty of wounds, healed off wounds. I was in a fine position. There wasn't a lot to talk about. If you saw the Venom top 8 match, it was a lot like that, where I just survived the early game, got to the mid game, and started winning from there. Round 4 was against Invisible Woman. Shout outs to Scott. It was a fantastic deck. I started off okay. And if I had caught on to what he was doing, I think I could have made that game a lot more interesting by getting rid of the singularities. But I didn't catch on to what he was doing. I didn't see any when he caned. It was like Iron Man's, Ghost Riders, things that weren't giving any indication of what it could be to me. Maybe I should have scouted better throughout the day. I didn't, whatever. But I knew Molder was going to be one of my big things. I called Silver Surfer, which would have been a threat all on its own. I'm not saying that at all, but I have a lot more ways to combat a Silver Surfer than I do an Infinite Combo, and that just wasn't going to happen. So, great game. You got the Infinite Combo off. I'm glad everyone could see it on stream. I would have scooped a lot earlier if we were on stream. So, 2-2, I was like, oh man, I got to win out for sure to even have a shot. So round 5 was against the former People's Champion, Burt Richardson, on his first evil deck. I believe I won the die roll. I can't remember for sure, but I definitely I got a good curve. Played Ant-Man, wounded him turn 1. Yondu, wounded him 2 and 2. I wounded him 4 turns in a row. And he whiffed twice completely on his experience gain. So I got lucky there, unlucky for him. Eventually he did level, and he had 4 or 5 blues. I can't remember exactly how many he had. I just knew they were there, and I had to power through it. He had a Loki, pulled out a Thanos from the graveyard at one point, Fluke Man. He had plenty of fodder to be able to fight and get in there, get wounds on me. But the MVP was Molder. It just got rid of all 4 copies of his Thanos, got rid of Vulture. I don't think I got rid of anything else. I thought about getting rid of Surtur at one point, but honestly, I was like, it's kind of late game. If Surtur comes down, yeah, it might destroy some of my resources, but I already had a Molder and a Bruce Banner out. I wasn't super worried about it. Eventually, he just kind of ran out of steam, was dying for blues. Couldn't get the last draw to try and survive longer on his last wound, and I just got there. It was a great game. I always feel bad for it. We played 3 out of 3 of the tournaments I've been in now, and the poor guy hasn't got to beat me yet. So I felt bad, but it was a great game. And then final round of Swiss was against another Thor deck, one of our local Texas players who had just picked it back up. and it was very much a repeat of the Thor from round 3. Very similar. You know, he got decent draws. I mean, he didn't draw terrible, but just Captain Marvel is really strong in the is an anti-aggro main character. You know, at one point I think he was a 10-10. I slapped down an Anya as a level 2 Captain Marvel, and I just stunned him. There wasn't a ton he can do. I got heals. He got a couple wounds. It wasn't bad, but he just ran out of steam at the end of the game, and that was that. So that locked me in the top 8. I ran in at 8th place, and I was like, you know what, whatever, I'll take it. I'm completely fine with that. And when I saw my top 8 pathing, I was pretty happy. You know, I've heard some guys comment on how luck of top 8 is real, and it is real. I got a really good path for my top 8. Venom, as you guys all watched in the top 8, was a fantastic matchup for me. I was able to level quickly. You know, he made some, you know, I think some questionable plays in the beginning, helped me leveling up early, but I think that's just from a lack of, this is a main character people don't really test against, as well as, you know, being knowledgeable in your own deck. Those are general plays you would make. So it was a great matchup for me. You know, Sean played a great game, but it was a quick 2-0. You know, again, I even told him after the match, I was like, dude, you got a bad beat. You know, that could have been completely different top 8 pathing for sure. So top 4, again, I played against Rogue, and I got my vengeance this time. I remembered my Anyas when I played it in their effects. He made a couple errors, used a Christie to try and wound my Captain Marvel with a solo attack, and it leveled up my Marvel to level 3, and I was able to just kill it, KO it for nothing. He made another misplay when I had played an Anya. He tried pitching Call to give his Rogue a +1/+1 counter, which it just didn't do anything. So he wasted a couple cards, and those are some pretty back-breaking ones. And then game 2, he didn't. I can't remember if he leveled to 3 or not, but he ran out of stuff to be able to level. He definitely got to 2, but he couldn't get to 3. I know he was a little location starved, and I just got to 3 in a good period. So it was a good game. Knowing his deck list obviously helped me a lot more when I think I pulled off a Molder, but it just wasn't, just didn't line up for him there. And then in the finals, you all saw against Outriders, a matchup I was prepared to play against. His deck was definitely a little heavier in the late game than I was used to, especially with Ego. Thanos I wasn't super worried about. The Chitauri Leviathan was a cool tech, but also not like incredibly just worried about playing against it. The main worry for me was Ego. I think that showed in game 2 when he slapped it down. I was like, oh, okay, that's a problem. And I just didn't have anything to get past it efficiently. It requires a team attack, something like that. You know, a Yondu to put a -1 counter on it, something like that to be able to, you know, hurt him. And it just didn't matter at that point. So, but it was a great game from Kevin. Game 3, you know, I had a good hand. I had the heals. My game 3 hand, I remember very vividly because it was an instant keep. It was a Yondu, 2 Dana Scullys, and 2 X-Files, and I was going first, so I knew I'd get at least the wounds off on everybody and the heal off for sure. I think I wound up drawing into your last one eventually, but it was just a bomb of a hand to help me keep, you know, level up and, you know, keep the wounds off and get to the late game where I, you know, should win. Molder was the MVP on that one for obviously getting rid of the egos, because that was going to be a problem card. But that was the match. So it was great games. I had a fun time. So as far as the post-tournament, it was great to have won another one, especially with Captain Marvel. I think it was a deck people didn't see coming necessarily, but obviously is not the end-all be-all tier 0 deck. So it felt good to do that. The deck ran really smooth. I was very happy with how it went. It performed like I thought it would. The tournament, shout out to everyone at Paper Games. The tournament was ran incredibly smooth. I mean, clean store. I mean, we were booking it on the Swiss rounds. We even had time to go eat before top 8. So it was just a fantastically ran tournament, very efficient. I'd even go back there for a regular tournament. You know, if we had a bigger just event, you know, to go out there, I'd totally go back up there again. So good versus evil as a whole. It's hard to argue with the results of top 8. I mean, we had 8 different top 8 decks, I believe, and that's typically indicative of a good format, or at least an okay format, right? I think part of that is people hate Outriders, and don't get me wrong, you know, John put a ton of work in that Mimic deck, obviously. I don't necessarily agree that decks should be winning like that. I think that's a problem. And I think Outriders are a problem, for sure. I mean, my deck was completely designed to go against that, and it was he still won a game. So it's really tough to sit there and justify that deck's not meta warping, for sure. So I don't know. I don't think there was anything inherently wrong with Good versus Evil. I actually think it would have been one of our best formats to date, and I think it's been our most open format since the introduction of formats. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, every main character was viable or usable, excuse me, and which in turn made every supporting character usable. Now, did that break up some combo stuff? Yeah, sure. I mean, it definitely did. But it still allowed for a ton of main characters to show up and play the game. And I think the top 8 showed that. So would I play Good versus Evil again? I mean, yeah, but I think it'd be hard-pressed to have the same results. I think more people would bring Outriders, more, you know, anti-Outrider stuff, because they are just they're the deck that kind of runs the format. So, again, the tournament was fantastic. Shout out to everyone that was there. Thanks to C-Stacks for letting me come on his channel, just talking about the deck. I'm looking forward to the next one to defend my back-to-back-to-back titles. So, thanks again, everybody. Y'all have a good one, and see you in the next game.